In this portion of the video, we're just going to go over the major differences between passive and active systems. Right now, the system is still set up as a passive system. What we're going to do is kind of show you the few pieces of equipment that you'd be using to go to an active recovery system. With passive, you're going to be using heat on your collection chamber and cool on your tank, most likely dry ice for the most efficiency, to transfer solvents. Active is where we're going to be using a CME POL pump and a small amount of dry ice to transfer our solvent vapor back into a liquid and over into our tank, just like you would with passive, but this time we're using an active mechanical pump. So number one, obviously we just spoke about, we've got a CME POL recovery pump, an extra hose, coil, USA made, and an extra hose. I have a good little mixture through a stainless hose in the mix. It just happened to be on the coil, so we're just gonna roll with it. So let's kind of get into how you would take your passive system and hook it up to be able to run actively. The number one thing you're gonna do is pretty much take your recovery line right off of your tank here. Take this. So this line, everything is going, this is where your vapor fuel or vapor solvent is going to be coming out of your collection chamber and moving through this hose. Now I always recommend, myself doing extractions for coming up on close to a decade here, bump trap, what we like to call pump protection at 710 Snob. It's basically an expansion chamber that has a form of heat on it. We have a couple different variations. It's really important. Personally, it'll make your pump last a lot longer and be a whole lot happier throughout its life. And you'll see a lot less services and a lot less parts when you do service your pump. So always remember using a bump trap, heat exchanger, any sort of pump protection, and no, a molecular sieve does not count. We'll go over that in just a second because I prefer to put my molecular sieve post-pump, and we'll explain why in just a second. So, not going to implement a bump trap just for simplicity of this video. I want people to basically just be able to understand the concept of active recovery. So we're going to take our out of our collection line and plug that into the in, clearly labeled with a nice yellow label right here on the CME POL pump. Okay. Now we have our inlet connection on. Again, in these videos, everything is hand tight. This is for demonstration and really where everything goes. Yes, everything needs to be torqued down with a wrench. Crescent wrenches, they're great as long as you know how to use one. If you don't, it could create issues. So get yourself a wrench set. Now, moving on. The outlet of your pump is where you're going to be connecting your coil. So this is a pretty standard recovery coil. Let me get the hose off here so I can explain to you guys the differences on this coil. What you have here is you have an inlet coming down, feeding to the top, and then you have an outlet, whichever way you're going to be running your coil, coming from the bottom of the coil going straight up. And the way we want this to work is we want our hot vapor coming out of our pump to come right into this coil. Now realistically, you really want to, I personally like to put my molecular sieve right after the outlet of this pump. Why? Super hot vapor, no chance of it being a liquid. So if you come out of your pump, feed your molecular sieve top down, and the bottom of your molecular sieve feeds out and into your coil, you'll always have hot vapor in your molecular sieve and never risk washing dust into your tank. It's a whole nother, that's a conversation for a whole nother day. Anyways, so what we want to do is we want the pump to feed out into the top of this coil so that the vapor can condense into a liquid spiraling down, and then once it is a liquid, be ejected from the coil system quickly. If we ran that in reverse, we would be condensing a liquid as we're building up. This is a 22-foot coil. We don't want the pump to be forcing liquid 22 feet up. It's really going to damage your pump. It's going to make it last a very short period of time. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and install this bad boy right here. Hopefully you can see that. I'll take this hose, put it on the outlet of my CME POL pump here. Okay, for demonstration purposes, we'll put our coil right here. We are connecting to the top of the coil so the hot vapor feeds down, turns into a liquid, and then is quickly ejected from the coil. Again, everything's hand tight. Take our LP350 hose. Maybe a little bit easier to connect this. This is going to go onto your vapor port of your tank, just like it would on passive recovery. And remember guys, read the valves. Don't trust the color. Every company is different. There you go. Take this hose here. Bear with me. Add last hose to complete the loop. Now, let me see if you guys can see this. Yes, fantastic. Okay. It may look a little confusing right here, but basically what's going on, we're coming out of our collection chamber into our pump. Our pump's going to compress our vapor gas out into our coil. Coil is going to convert your liquid gas, or excuse me, your vapor gas into a liquid. That liquid is then going to exit your coil and return to your tank. It is beneficial to have a cool tank. You know, just throw some regular ice on it is going to make a pretty big difference, believe it or not. It just keeps the head pressure down, unless you have one of our tanks with a head coil in it. That's basically a short coil high up in the tank to kill any head pressure that builds in the tank during recovery. Check those out. Other than that, the system's going to operate pretty much exactly the same as a passive system, besides the fact that you're going to open your recovery valve, turn your pump on, and make sure that your valve going back into your tank is open. Otherwise, your pump's going to high pressure shut off and you possibly could damage your own equipment. Now, one of the major things that I have to go over with people, and a lot of people don't understand this, is the concept of a check valve. A pump acts just like a check valve on your recovery system. So that means gas, nitrogen, vacuum, whatever you're thinking about, it can only go one way. It can go in the in and out the out. It's a check valve system. Just almost every pump that I'm familiar with operates that way so that you don't get back pressure flow. Now, because of that, when you pull a vacuum on your extractor, your vacuum is pretty much going to stop at your pump. This hose, and your coil are not going to see a vacuum. So make sure you throw a T in there with a valve so that you can pull a vacuum, or have a technique of your own to be able to make sure that line is charged and you're not introducing oxygen into your solvents, because that could become hazardous depending on what kind of solvent you may be using. Other than that, active recovery.